A mochi moment from Tara, who writes, "For years, all my doctor said was eat less and move more, which never worked. But you know what does? The simple eating tips from my nutritionist at Mochi. And after losing over 30 pounds, I can say you're not just another GLP-1 source. You're a life source." Thanks, Tara. I'm Myra Ahmed, founder of Mochi Health. To find your Mochi moment, visit joinmochi.com.
Tara is a Mochi member compensated for her story.
This podcast is supported by MIDI Health. Are you in midlife, feeling dismissed, unheard, or just plain tired of the old healthcare system? You're not alone. For too long, women's serious midlife health issues have been trivialized, ignored, and met with a just deal with it attitude. Many of us have been made to feel ashamed or forgotten. In fact, even today, 75% of women seeking care for menopause and perimenopause issues are left entirely untreated. But here's the powerful truth. It's time for a change. It's time for MIDI. MIDI is not just a healthcare provider. It's a women's telehealth clinic founded and supported by world-class leaders in women's health. What sets MIDI apart? We are the only women's telehealth brand covered by major insurance companies, making high-quality, expert care accessible and affordable for all women everywhere. Our clinicians provide one-on-one, face-to-face consultations where they truly listen to your unique needs. We offer a full range of holistic, data-driven solutions, from hormonal therapies and weight loss protocols to lifestyle coaching and preventive health guidance. This isn't a one-size-fits-all care. This is care uniquely tailored for you. At MIDI, you will join our patients who feel seen, heard, and prioritized. You will find that our mission is clear: to help all women thrive in midlife, giving them access to the health care they deserve. Because we believe midlife isn't the middle at all. It's just the beginning of your second act. Ready to feel your best and write your second act script? Visit joinmidi.com today to book your personalized, insurance-covered virtual visit. That's joinmidi.com. MIDI, the care women deserve.
You're listening to Campus Killings, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, DNA ID, Zodiac Speaking, Scene of the Crime, Missing Persons,
Beyond Bizarre True Crime,
and
Killer Communications.
all of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
Hi, Meghan, and hello, listeners. Today's case was requested by Elena G. She writes that she is a huge fan of women and crime, and she is also in the middle of binging Campus Killings. And we are so happy to hear that. Thank you, Elena, and all of our listeners for your continued support of this show. Elena also writes that she sent us Virginia Olsen's case because it's unsolved, and while there are a lot of rumors and conjecture around what happened to 19-year-old Virginia, there's not much publicly available. So she requested that we do a deep dive into the case to bring some fresh attention to it in the hopes that it might be resolved. Luckily for Elena and all of our listeners, an English professor and a retired law enforcement officer were also interested in solving this case, and they teamed up to investigate it and wrote a book on their findings. The book is called A Murder on Campus by Brian and Cameron Santana. These two are brothers, which is why they have the same last name. And this book was published quite recently in 2024, so their investigation is very up to date.
Ooh, this might be interesting for a book club.
Yes. And as always, when we use a book on this show, most of the content for today's episode is derived from A Murder on Campus, and we'll have a link to it in the show notes for anyone who would like to check it out. So let's jump in with a little background on the university where Virginia Olsen was a student, the University of North Carolina-Asheville, also known as UNCA.
Yeah, that's where my brother lives, correct? And that I just went to Asheville recently, so I'm
I did not, but
yes, I'm in particular interested.
I know it's a lovely place.
Yes.
While it was founded a junior college in 1927 as the first tuition-free institution in North Carolina, that changed only a few years later when the Great Depression hit. In addition to charging tuition by 1930, the school also ended up merging with another new college in the area, and the new institution became Biltmore College. And this was due to Asheville being home to the nation's largest house, the Biltmore, which, fun fact, was built by George Washington Vanderbilt, who also, Meghan, you know what connection we have to that?
Yeah, Vanderbilts were on our campus as well at FDU.
Yes. Yep, they also, our campus, our FDU Madison or Florham Park campus was also built by a Vanderbilt, George's sister, Florence.
Right. Ah, yes, so interesting.
But Biltmore College didn't last long either, as the campus moved in 1949 and was renamed yet again, along with their administration being taken over by the Asheville City school system. I assume that this wasn't a 4-year college during this time. It was probably more of what we think of as a community college. Either way, by 1961, the school moved a second time to become part of the larger University of North Carolina system, which is an umbrella organization for all of the public 4-year institutions in the state. In fact, we covered their Chapel Hill campus in episode 41. Do you recall that one? That's
yes. Now I do. Okay. Yes.
Joining the UNC system gave the school 4-year accreditation status, and they were renamed the University of North Carolina-Asheville. They conferred their first bachelor's degrees in 1966, and in 1992, UNCA was classified as a liberal arts 1 school within the UNC system. But even before its classification, UNCA had a reputation for being a haven for creative people. And this is exactly what drama enthusiast Virginia Olsen was looking for. Known as Ginger by all of her family and friends, Virginia was described as an easygoing, kind, and introspective young woman who had deep passion for the arts and for her Christian faith. Though she moved several times during her childhood due to her father's job with the Department of Agriculture, Ginger made friends easily wherever she went, and she was said to leave a lasting impression due to her quiet kindness. She came from a very religious, close-knit Presbyterian family and spent much of her time journaling, painting, reading poetry and the Bible, and also performing in her high school's theater productions. By the time she was applying to college, Ginger's father had taken a project installing telephone lines in rural North Carolina, so the family relocated from Northern Virginia to Lexington, North Carolina. And since Ginger was incredibly close with her family, choosing a college that wouldn't be very far from them was a top priority for her. Second was choosing a school that focused on creativity and the arts. But as much as Ginger was decisive about where she wanted to go, she didn't start her time at UNCA with it all figured out. She actually went in undeclared, as she was unsure exactly what she wanted out of life. But at only 18 years old, she felt that she had a lot of time to figure it out. She spent her first year doing what many college students do, making friends, getting involved in on-campus clubs, and taking classes that were of interest to her. Ginger found herself most drawn to drama classes and public speaking. She just loved the way these courses merged all of the things that she found fascinating: theater, poetry, and the English language. So at the beginning of her sophomore year, she declared a drama major and auditioned for a role in the fall play. And she got a prominent role. As she looked forward to her spring semester, Ginger busied herself with applications and auditions to get into the summer stock acting scene. So these are basically theaters that put on very quickly produced plays over the summer, and it's one of the ways that students or new actors can get experience and start building their resumes. In addition to getting more acting experience, Ginger was also taking a full class load, which meant that she spent a lot of time studying. And all of her friends agreed that Ginger's favorite place to escape for a little quiet studying was the botanical gardens located across the street from the university. And while the gardens offered a beautiful and tranquil place for many of UNCA's students to find some quiet study time, they would become a deadly place for Ginger. On Sunday afternoon, April 15th of 1973, Ginger told her roommate Jane that she was going to study for her upcoming Spanish tests out in the botanical gardens since it was such a nice day. She left around 12:30 and met a few friends from the drama department in the dorm parking lot. After a few minutes, she excused herself to study and promised that she would catch up with them all to talk about the upcoming school play at dinner that evening. She then joined around 100 other students and uncounted Asheville locals who were out in force enjoying the nice weather. Ginger selected a rock on a secluded hilltop overlooking the UNCA campus. But around 3:30 p.m., two teenaged boys who had been having a picnic stumbled across a horrendous scene on the hilltop. Ginger's half-naked body was sprawled across the dirt path in a huge pool of blood. As soon as the boys had realized what they were seeing, they ran back the way they had come and started shouting that somebody was hurt and needed help. 4 police arrived only minutes later, but Ginger was already gone, and the call shifted quickly for a person in distress to a homicide investigation. At 4 p.m., investigators arrived to begin processing the scene.
This is really brazen. So this is a crowded park, daylight. It already tells us something about the type of offender, I think. And just making a mental note of that here, because I was really surprised that you were saying like hundreds of people out and during the day. This is a brazen offender. So what was the condition of her body? Like, what were the injuries?
So initial reports describe Ginger's position as face up with a gag in her mouth that looked to be made from strips that were ripped off the bottom of her green shirt. Her hands and feet were bound with the same ripped fabric, and her jean shorts were soaked in blood and pulled down to her knees. Her underwear was missing. She had been stabbed in the chest, and her throat was slashed. Her glasses and notebook had been neatly arranged next to her body, and her Spanish textbook was still open on a rock, its pages fluttering in the spring breeze.
And Amy, I'm assuming by what you said, she was sexually assaulted, or there was indicators of a sexual assault.
Yep, you're absolutely correct. There was, unfortunately, she was also sexually assaulted. As police collected evidence and Ginger's body was prepared for removal to the medical examiner's office, the scene they were investigating was anything but secure. Though a perimeter had been established, it did not keep many of the reporters who had flocked to the gardens from going over the area to take photos. And as word quickly spread through not just the gardens, but also the university that someone had been murdered, students began wandering into the area trying to find out what was going on. In fact, Ginger, who had no identifying documents on her at the time of her body's discovery, ended up being ID'd by the medical examiner when Ginger's roommate, Jane, showed up at the botanical gardens with her picture.
How did she know to show up with her picture?
So in later interviews, she would explain that she heard that someone had been murdered in the gardens, and she felt a sense of dread, she says, that it might have possibly been Ginger.
Oh, wow.
So she said she grabbed a picture of Ginger from her desk and walked down to where the police were trying to process this chaotic scene.
That's some intuition.
Yeah. And she showed someone Ginger's picture, and the on-scene pathologist was quickly able to confirm that, unfortunately, Ginger was the young woman who was deceased. Or the young woman who was murdered. Ginger's autopsy was performed at 8 p.m. that day, with the cause of death ruled as homicide due to a stab wound to her chest. This wound penetrated the left ventricle and led to massive hemorrhaging. In total, she lost around 3 liters of blood. As mentioned before, she had also been sexually assaulted, and though her throat had been deeply cut, the autopsy revealed that this had been a post-mortem wound. It was clear that this young girl had endured a brutal and violent death, but there was very little physical evidence to start investigators in a particular direction.
And now, a brief word from our sponsors.
I'm sorry, that flight's been canceled.
Wait to see Santa is 2 hours. Oh, come on! I've got a tree to pick up!
Take a break from holiday stress with Prime Video. Whether you want a little me time or we time, new releases or holiday classics, relax and unwrap your next watch.
That's more like it.
Prime Video. It's giving holiday harmony.
AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.
'Tis the season for identity theft. This time of year, most of us are checking off our holiday gift lists. But guess what? Identity thieves have lists too, and your personal information might be on them. Protect your identity with LifeLock. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points every second and alerts you to threats you could miss by yourself, even if you keep an eye on your bank and credit card statements. If your identity is stolen, your own US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. And all plans are backed by the $1 Million Protection Package. The last thing you want to do this holiday season is face drained accounts, fraudulent loans, or other financial losses from identity theft all alone. Make this season about joy, not identity theft, with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Call 1-800-LifeLock and use promo code IHEART. Or go to lifelock.com/iHeart for 40% off. Terms apply.
But as difficult as the police's job seemed to be, initial news reports about Ginger's murder made it sound like her killer would be caught within days. And to the local police department's credit, detectives did hit the ground running. They were interviewing hundreds of people who had been in the gardens. They were also stopping any student they could find on campus. They were just trying to get any information they could about Ginger. But as we know, ear and eyewitness accounts are rarely reliable, and this proved true from the very beginning of Ginger's case. Witnesses gave varying times and descriptions for when they had seen things and what they claimed to have observed. So some people said they saw a young woman sitting on the rock by herself, while others said they saw her sitting with a man with his arm around her. And yet others claim that she has been with two men. Then there was even one who said that he thought he saw Ginger get into the car with two men and then get dropped off by them later in the day. So this is problematic. There's a lot of varying accounts here.
This is the very essence of eyewitness misidentification and why we just make terrible eyewitnesses in general.
Yes. But while these descriptions all varied slightly, most of them did agree that at least one of the men was white, looked around 20 years old, and was around 165 pounds, and was also wearing a fatigue jacket and boots. Unfortunately, this did not narrow the field down, as many men in Asheville were Vietnam vets and were often seen wearing combat boots and fatigue jackets.
Oh, jeez.
In the midst of trying to decipher what was real and what was not, investigators also faced extreme pressure from the Asheville community and UNCA itself to get a suspect into custody. Now, this university was small with only around 800 students, and one of its biggest advertising strategies was that it was a safe campus for parents to send their teenagers to.
Right.
But you can understand a university, obviously, what's most important here is to find out who did this to Ginger, but this also has implications for the university in general.
Mm-hmm.
Ginger's violent murder proved that perhaps the campus wasn't as safe as advertised, and her death brought the entire university to a shocking halt. Students walked around like zombies, and after a full day of class where students were all clearly traumatized, the administration canceled courses for Tuesday the 17th, and in place they held a memorial service for Ginger in the campus chapel. The university was then closed for the rest of the week, and students were sent home.
That makes sense.
Yep. And administrators hope that by the time students return the following Monday, the killer would be arrested and everyone can go back to normal life.
I don't think it would ever go back to normal, but...
No, but also, another issue with this is it's possible that this decision to let students leave may have also allowed the suspect to get away.
Yep, just thinking that too, yeah.
Yep. Now, remember, we're talking about the 1970s. We don't have forensic ability to test DNA. So technically, any male in the surrounding area was a potential suspect. And the college had just let the entire university population leave the campus.
Yeah.
Students, staff, faculty, everyone. But despite this, investigators did have a potential suspect only 2 days after Ginger was murdered. While his name was never publicly released, a young man around 20 years old was brought in for questioning after he had been found breaking and entering a structure near the crime scene. He also had small blood stains on his shoes that he was not able to explain. But after 3 days in police custody, the man had no physical evidence connecting him to Ginger's murder. And it turned out that he was an escapee from a mental hospital in Virginia, and he had not even been in Asheville on the day of the murder.
Oh, there goes lead number one.
Yep. So they kept questioning people, and only a few days later, they got a tip from a local woman saying that her neighbor, 45-year-old John Rivas, had come up to her and nervously asked her to pray with him on April 15th. He also muttered that something was, quote, a bloody mess, and he was also acting agitated.
Mm-hmm.
However, she didn't immediately think something was strange because Rivas was known to suffer from mental health issues, and he often acted strange and said odd things. But when she read about Ginger's murder in the paper, she had a bad feeling that the, quote, mess Rivas referred to had to do with this crime.
Oh, okay.
So police brought Rivas in for questioning, and he confirmed that he had mental health issues and that he was under the care of a psychiatrist. Later records would show that due to his mental illness, Rivas proved difficult to communicate with, but they were able to confirm with him that he lived within walking distance of the botanical gardens, and on the day of the murder, a neighbor had been giving him a ride and they'd stopped him at the gardens on the way to his apartment. During the stop, Rivas claimed that his neighbor had pointed out a girl sitting at the top of the bank, though he clarified that they never got out of the car and never moved close enough to approach her. But this detail made police suspicious since if the girl in question was Ginger, she would not have been visible to the car on the road below the hill.
Mm-hmm.
So this is actually good police work.
Right.
Because sometimes when a potential suspect says something contradictory, the police continue moving forward, and it almost sounds like they realize this might be a red flag.
Yeah.
So the rock she had been reading on was secluded from the road, and Rivas would only have been able to see her if he had been standing on the path with her. Police were further suspicious since some eyewitness accounts had placed the man sitting on the rock with her. Now, Rivas had a criminal history of sex-based voyeurism, and he was also known to have connections in the entertainment industry. So police knew that Ginger had been looking to get some acting roles. So this led some people to think, is it possible that Rivas had lured her to botanical gardens for some kind of fake professional reason and then killed her? I guess it seems possible.
I guess that seems possible. I wouldn't say maybe plausible, but did they search his house?
Actually, they did. About a week later, they did get a search warrant for Rivas's apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And inside, investigators confiscated glasses, a knife, a white T-shirt with red on it, dark boots, a piece of a lady's green T-shirt, a garment containing blood, rust-colored pants, and a handkerchief.
Oh.
These items were all sent to the lab for testing.
Okay.
But again, we're talking 1973. The only testing available was a very primitive blood test and fingerprint dusting. And neither of these tests matched Rivas to the crime scene.
There goes lead number 2. All right.
Well, also, something else they looked into, there were no environmental or relational ties between Ginger and Rivas. Based on the many interviews conducted with Ginger's friends and family, she didn't even know him, and he was in no way affiliated with UNCA.
Okay.
And while he had been at the botanical gardens around the same time as Ginger, so were over 100 other people who had been enjoying the nearby trails. Without any evidence to tie him to the murder, he was released, and there were no new suspects or even leads in the case for the next 8 months. By February of 1974, local police called in the Carolina Bureau of Investigation, otherwise known as the SBI, who specialize in solving difficult criminal cases. Over the next several months, special agents joined forces with local detectives, and in September of 1974, they traveled to Florida following a potential lead. This time, it was a man named Glenn Allen Carlson, who fit the eyewitness description of the killer. And he had also attended UNCA in 1969 and only lived about a block away from the botanical gardens.
How did they get this lead?
Well, he had been arrested several times in Asheville for burglary, and after moving to Florida, he had been charged in 40 cases for sexual assault.
Wow, okay.
So to them, he sounds like the perfect suspect who perhaps fled the area to escape police notice.
Okay.
Unfortunately for the case and for justice for Ginger, subsequent interviews proved that he had not been anywhere near the UNCA campus on the day of the murder. In fact, he moved to Jackson, Florida long before Ginger was even killed. And on the morning of the murder, he was seen by several eyewitnesses delivering newspapers around his neighborhood. So there was absolutely no way that he would have been able to leave Florida on the morning of the 15th and be in Asheville by 2 p.m. to murder Ginger.
Right.
So police were back to the drawing board again.
We'll return after a brief word from our sponsors.
I'm sorry, that flight's been canceled.
The wait to see Santa is 2 hours. Oh, come on! I've got a tree to pick up!
Take a break from holiday stress with Prime Video. Whether you want a little me time or we time, new releases or holiday classics, relax and unwrap your next watch.
That's more like it.
Prime Video. It's giving holiday harmony.
AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.
'Tis the season for identity theft. This time of year, most of us are checking off our holiday gift lists. But guess what? Identity thieves have lists too, and your personal information might be on them. Protect your identity with LifeLock. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points every second and alerts you to threats you could miss by yourself, even if you keep an eye on your bank and credit card statements. If your identity is stolen, your own US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. And all plans are backed by the $1 Million Protection Package. The last thing you want to do this holiday season is face drained accounts, fraudulent loans, or other financial losses from identity theft all alone. Make this season about joy, not identity theft, with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Call 1-800-LifeLock and use promo code IHEART. Or go to lifelock.com/iHeart for 40% off. Terms apply.
Despite the SBI's involvement, Ginger's case would go completely cold over the next several years. In 1977, the SBI gave the case back to local police, who created a special task force to try and find new leads in her case. But though 5 detectives spent the next 2 years combing over every report, every eyewitness statement, and the evidence log, nothing new came out of their investigation. And by 1979, Ginger's case was on ice and her file sat quietly on a shelf waiting for some miracle tip that would maybe bust the whole case open.
I mean, this wasn't for lack of police work, that's for sure, in the upfront. It sounds like they really hit the pavement.
Yeah, sometimes it is. Sometimes it is the investigation stalling, but no, I would agree. It looks like this was pretty good police work. Unfortunately, a tip never came, and it would be 4 years before a new detective took an interest in re-examining Ginger's case. A veteran homicide detective named Will Honorino became a lieutenant in 1983, and he used his position to delegate 2 detectives to reopen Ginger's case. Several forensic breakthroughs had become available to investigators, as well as technological advances that allowed officers to see new, fresh perspectives for evidence in unsolved cases.
Okay.
Along with the new technology, and prior to his promotion, Honorino had solved a homicide that was eerily similar to Ginger's, and he was confident that he and his team would finally be able to name Ginger's killer. He was so confident, in fact, that he actually gave a press conference where he announced that their prime suspect was a man who had fled the Asheville area back in 1973 and was currently residing in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Whoa.
He even boldly stated that he would be returning from Santa Fe with Ginger's killer under arrest.
That sounds like, what do they call it? Counting your chickens before they hatch? Or, I don't know.
Yes. So I'm sure you can guess that this is not what happened.
Yeah.
Because this new prime suspect was not new at all. In fact, it was the same man that police had gotten search warrants for in 1973, and that would be John Rivas. So Honorino really failed on 2 fronts here. For one, his interrogation tactics during the Santa Fe trip did not get Rivas to confess. And second, Annarino resent all the forensic evidence obtained from the original 1973 search warrant to the labs for testing, and nothing was ever publicly released about the results. Which means that either once again they could not tie Rivas to the crime, or it's also possible that the samples had become too degraded to give viable results.
Right.
But either way, Annarino was the last public push to solve Ginger's case. And I am sad to say that it has been cold ever since.
What year was that again?
1983.
Whoa. Wait, that's it? You don't have any updates?
I mean, I can tell you it's still considered an open and active case by local police, but there has not been a tip, a lead, or a break in over 51 years.
And so the brothers who published this book, is that the hope? Like by publishing this book now, like a flood of information will come, it'll renew interest?
Yeah, so in doing research for their book, the Santana brothers interviewed the current detectives assigned to the cold case task force. Okay. And while they weren't able to say very much since Ginger's case is technically still open, they did admit that John Rivas, who died in 1992, is no longer even considered a suspect in the case.
Okay. Well, I'm glad they kind of cleared that up. I feel like this case is ripe for a DNA discovery.
Yeah. And, whether or not they have a new suspect, that remains unknown. But when a case becomes this old, investigators face serious challenges. And that leads us to the biggest question. Is it even possible at this point for Ginger's case to be solved?
Yes. 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 We have seen it happen. We have seen what genealogy, especially genetic genealogy, can now do. So it is definitely possible. I guess it's a definite possibility. It's just a matter of likely.
Yeah, I would say anything is possible, but unfortunately, I don't think it's likely given the time period in which Ginger was killed. So aside from the obvious lack of forensic technology available in the early 1970s, the basic investigative policies and procedures that ensure cases can be solved today were completely unheard of in 1973. For example, the first documented administration of a rape kit in a criminal investigation didn't happen until 1978, which was 5 years after Ginger's murder. And this was only the first documented use, which means that rape kits weren't widely used in criminal investigations until well into the 80s. And it's unclear if a rape kit was even administered in Ginger's case. While the autopsy report notates that sperm were present, the Santana brothers were told that a viable semen sample does not exist. So my guess is that a rape kit probably was not even performed in this case. And unfortunately, this would mean that there isn't any reliable DNA to test against CODIS or to use for forensic genealogy. So like you said, forensic genealogy does help solve even older cases than this, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem like there's any DNA available for testing.
I was hoping they would have gathered something, saved the... what about the clothing, did you say? The clothing or anything like that? It just doesn't seem like they collected the right evidence because they didn't know to.
No. Well, if you recall, there were also other issues related to the crime scene protocols and evidence collection.
Right, okay.
Now, prior to 1972, there were no standard policies for how crime scenes should be processed and documented. And even though by the time of Ginger's murder, some policies had been instituted, they were not widely followed. So this means that there's a high probability that vital evidence may have been missing while Ginger's murder scene was processed. Remember, I said it was not secure, especially not secured in the way that it would be today.
Yeah.
It was open enough that reporters and photographers were literally walking through the scene.
Yeah.
And Ginger's roommate was able to walk into the middle of the investigation and talk to the medical examiner.
This reminds me of, for some reason, the Martha Moxley murder that we covered on Women in Crime, because I remember the scene. Everyone walked through the scene and contaminated it. So, I mean, unfortunately, that's a downside. I feel like this case then, I mean, if there's not going to be solved on DNA, it is going to be unlikely, but this could be like a deathbed confession kind of thing, if possible.
Yeah. You had asked before about the clothing and other pieces of evidence. The problem is that paying for evidence to be retested can cost tens of thousands of dollars and obviously no guarantee of a useful result. And with limited funds for cold case investigations, detectives have to use discretion about what evidence to retest. So again, if they don't think they have DNA, it might not be worth it. Also, something else to point out, every time a piece of evidence is sent for testing, the samples degrade, which means that even if better technology is available in a few years, investigators might risk losing the ability to get a positive or useful result. Now, we don't know how well the evidence from Ginger's murder has held up over the years. Remember, the case was actively reinvestigated 3 times. The fact that it was reinvestigated so many times, it is very possible that these items are too degraded to test. Or maybe the current investigative team is waiting for better technology to ensure that they get a result instead of, keep sending it in. And lastly, I would say with 51 years gone, the pool of people with living memory of the murder gets smaller and smaller each year. And so there's less people for investigators to re-question, and therefore they are far less likely to get a lead. Not to mention, if Ginger's killer wasn't someone her age, there's a very high probability that they have already passed away.
I was just thinking that as well. And with the brutality and the nature of it, I'm going to say he wasn't her age and was maybe a little bit older. Yeah, I understand that this one is a tough one. Has anyone from her family, friend unit, stuck with this, been advocating, been pushing?
So unfortunately, once the case went cold, the advocacy seemed to stop. I mean, most cold cases that get solved do so because external advocacy keeps the case in the public's eye. We've seen cases where victims' families consistently call lead detectives for updates. They demand law enforcement attention. They get community support. They go to the local press. They keep the story alive through fundraisers and memorials, foundations. They hire their own PIs. Unfortunately, that didn't happen for Ginger. For one, her case never made national or even regional news. Only local papers had covered her story, and after the failed 1983 investigation, her case essentially vanished from the press completely.
Why did this not make bigger news, I wonder? I think that's odd.
I don't know. And as far as I could find, her family and friends gave no public interviews aside from answering police inquiries immediately following her murder. And I'm certainly not blaming her family because everyone responds to grief differently. And not everyone turns into a fierce advocate. Some people have different ways of dealing with this tremendous loss that does not involve, talking to the press.
Right.
But unfortunately, the lack of advocacy means that most people forgot about Ginger by the mid-1980s. And when people stopped talking about it, there was no place for leads to generate or tips to be called in. At this point, it's important that we remember Ginger for the life she lived instead of the horrific way she died. On April 21st, 1973, Ginger was laid to rest at the New Prospect Baptist Church Cemetery in Parson, Tennessee. Her friends from UNCA made the long drive out for her funeral and carried her casket from the church to the cemetery. Everyone in her life struggled to accept the fact that she was truly gone, especially since she often wrote letters to her loved ones, and several of them received letters from her postmarked only a day before her murder. It was a surreal and traumatizing reminder of how quickly she had gone from a young woman with her whole life ahead of her to being murdered by an unknown assailant. While her death didn't have any long-standing effects on UNCA, one large and immediate change was that the school created an on-campus police force for better security. Up until Ginger's murder, their public safety had been handled by security guards. So I think that is a huge policy change that happened in response to this.
Definitely.
But there were no memorials or scholarships in Ginger's memory until 2013, when one of her friends petitioned the school to create a memorial for the 40th anniversary of her death. At this time, UNC created Ginger's Garden with 3 benches and a rock bearing her name. This was done in the spirit of how much Ginger enjoyed sitting outside in nature to study, and the memorial provides a place for all of UNCA's students to study just like Ginger did. Unfortunately, we will probably never know who took Ginger's life so brutally, but there are still detectives hoping for a break in her case. So if anyone listening has any information that might lead investigators down a new path, you can reach out to the Asheville Police, a non-emergency line at 828-252-1010 1110. And if you have a case from your campus that you want us to cover, send us a request at abjackentertainment.com/campuskillings. All right, thank you all so much for listening today, and we hope that you will join us on the next episode of Campus Killings. Before we go today, if you'd like to support Campus Killings, consider subscribing to the show with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcasts.
Your subscription will get you VIP access to all the shows on the network that not only includes hundreds of episodes of ad-free listening, but also bonus content and early access to episodes.
For only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, you'll unlock a variety of listener benefits, and you'll be supporting this show in the process.
Head over to Apple Podcasts and search for either Campus Killings or AbJack, and you can start your subscription with a free trial.
Your support is greatly appreciated.
Campus Killings is hosted by Dr. Meghan Sachs and Dr. Amy Shlosberg, with research and writing by Abagail Belcastro. It's produced by Mike Morford of AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to follow Campus Killings on social media. You can find Campus Killings on Twitter with the handle @CampusKillings or on Facebook at facebook.com/CampusKillings. You can also visit the show's homepage at campuskillings.com. Be sure to tune in every other Saturday for new episodes of Campus Killings.